Hello, my friend. Welcome to Dreamy Nights. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight we'll drift together into a gentle forest where time moves slowly, where the leaves seem to whisper secrets older than memory itself. This is a story carried by the hush of twilight, one that lives in the rustling of the trees and the quiet wisdom of the elder who tends their flame. So settle in, take a long, soft breath, and let the day melt away. When you're ready, our story begins. Twilight had settled across the whispering woods like a woven shawl of silver and violet. The air was cool, faintly sweet, with the scent of moss and cedar, and every sound felt deliberate. A low hum of wind, a faraway owl, the hush of leaves brushing against one another. A thin trail of smoke rose through the canopy, tracing its way into the darkening sky, marking the place where the elder waited. In the heart of the woods, Marin sat beside a circle of softly glowing embers. Their hands, steady and lined with years, stirred the air just above the warmth, coaxing tiny sparks to dance and vanish. The elder's cloak, woven from rough bark fiber and wool, caught the dim firelight brown, green, and amber hues, shifting like the forest floor beneath dappled sunlight. No one hurried here, not even the wind. The forest seemed to breathe with Marin, each inhale pulling in the cool night, each exhale letting go of the weight of years. Around them, a faint mist curled close to the ground. The first stars appeared through openings in the treetops, faint and curious. Marin's voice rose, then a quiet murmur, low and slow, carrying easily across the stillness. Long before these woods had names, they said they were known only by sound, by the hush of branches, the rhythm of roots, the song of running water. Every leaf has listened, every stone has waited. These are their memories. The words seem to float like smoke, twining through the clearing, finding resting places among the ferns and fallen logs. A faint crackle from the fire punctuated the pause. Marie reached for a small cup beside them, carved from smooth wood, filled with tea dark as the night sky. The scent of herbs drifted through the air, mint sage, and something older deep, like the bark of oak. The elder took a slow sip, then placed the cup down with care, as if the ground itself might listen. There are stories, Marin whispered, that the wind carries only at dusk. They do not belong to any single heart, but to all who rest beneath these branches. The leaves rustled softly as though in agreement. Somewhere nearby, a brook murmured faintly, a silver thread winding through the undergrowth. Its voice blended with the night insects, with the distant call of a night bird, with the gentle rhythm of fire. Everything, it seemed, was part of the same quiet story. Marin closed their eyes. For a moment, the clearing became even stiller, as if the forest itself leaned in to listen. Then, with a small smile, they began to speak again, this time in a cadence that felt older, steadier, filled with the weight of long memory. There was once a sapling, they began, that grew beside a mirror pool. The pool reflected the world, clouds, wings, stars, even dreams. But when the wind rippled its surface, the sapling saw itself in motion and learned patience. It watched the pool change and yet remain. It learned that peace is not the absence of movement, but the stillness within it. The words unfurled slowly like soft threads being woven together. Each syllable seemed to settle into the listener's breath, easing the shoulders, softening the edges of thought. A faint warmth deepened in the clearing. The embers shifted from orange to gold, the mist glowing faintly with their light. Marine's eyes caught the reflection, two small sparks of calm within the shadows. Every tree, the elder said softly, has a rhythm, a story told not in words, but in waiting. Tonight, the woods remember. Tonight, we listen. The brook's song grew gentler. The fire hummed low. The leaves whispered their endless dialogue above. And for a long while, the elder said nothing more, allowing the quiet to fill every corner of the night, allowing peace to take root in the spaces between sound. The night deepened soft and velvety, wrapping the forest in its quiet hush. The fire had burned lower now, the glow pulsing gently like the slow heartbeat of the earth itself. Above, a crescent moon glimmered through drifting clouds, silvering the tops of leaves and the smooth surface of nearby stones. Marin sat very still, one hand resting upon a log worn smooth by seasons of listening. Their eyes followed the upward drift of a single ember, a golden spark that rose, dimmed, and disappeared into the mist. A faint smile traced their lips. This, they murmured, is how stories travel. Like embers carried by air, they fade to light again in other hearts. Around them, the woods sighed a tender breath, cool and familiar. Somewhere far off, a low trill of crickets joined the gentle percussion of water against rock. The forest was not silent. It was simply speaking in its own patient language. Marin reached for a pouch beside them, its fabric rough and faintly scented of pine resin. From it, they drew a handful of dried leaves and crushed them softly between their palms. The sound was delicate, like distant paper being folded. The scent that rose was both sweet and earthy, the ghost of summer still living in each fragment. "These are the leaves of memory," Marin said quietly. "The forest never forgets. Even when seasons change, the roots remember." They scattered the leaves into the fire. The flames accepted them with a whisper and a bloom of pale blue light. For a brief moment, the clearing smelled of rain and wood smoke, of faraway rainfall of time. Marin's voice carried again, slow as mist. "Once long ago, there was a hollow tree in the oldest part of the woods. Inside it lived a spirit of rest, unseen but always near. When the wind grew harsh, or the rains, wild travelers would place their hands upon its bark and feel the stillness within. The tree did not speak yet. Every heart who touched it found peace." A pause. Only the sound of the brook continued threading through the story like a gentle refrain. "The elder who taught me marrying," continued, "said that even silence is a kind of language, and the forest speaks it fluently." A small owl swept soundlessly overhead, its wings wide and soft as linen. The motion stirred a quiet ripple through the mist, and for a moment, silver particles of moonlight danced in the air. Marin watched their expression tender. "Every creature here," they whispered, "carries the night within. Not as darkness, but as rest." The forest listened. The leaves rustled in slow applause. A deeper calm began to gather, the sort that doesn't come from stillness alone, but from belonging, from knowing that everything here, from pebble to star, was moving in the same patient rhythm. The brook murmured in time, repeating its endless lullaby. Marin's hand traced a small circle in the soil beside the fire, one of their quiet habits, a gesture that seemed to honor the earth itself. "Each story," they said softly, "is a circle returning home. And when one story rests, another begins, carried gently on the breath of night." They looked up as though addressing the canopy of stars. "If we listen long enough, we may hear the forest remembering itself." The air shimmered faintly as though the night agreed. The elder poured another cup of tea, the liquid dark and fragrant. The steam rose and twisted in soft ribbons, vanishing into the cool night. The first sip, Marin mused, tastes of warmth. The second, of patience. The third, of peace. They drank slowly, eyes half closed, as if the moment itself was something sacred. All around, the whispering woods seemed to breathe in rhythm, 1,000 small sounds, each tender, unhurried at rest. The night had grown deeper still, a quiet vastness stretching across the forest like a soft velvet curtain. The air was cool but gentle, the kind of cool that wraps rather than chills. Each sound a sigh of wind, a drop of dew falling onto a leaf, seemed to arrive from a place older than time. The fire before Mary had faded to a tender glow, its light threading through the mist in narrow ribbons. The elder sat with a calm stillness, watching the smoke drift upward in lazy curls. The scent of burning cedar mingled with damp earth, and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers. Somewhere beyond the clearing, the forest stirred a quiet rustle, a soft murmur. The trees, tall and kind, leaned inward as though gathering closer to listen. Marin spoke again, voice no louder than a breath. "There is another story," they said, "one told to me long ago by a traveler who had walked until he forgot his own name. The woods," he said, "gave him one instead, a name shaped like the sound of water against stone." The elder's gaze drifted toward the brook. In the moonlight, it shimmered faintly like liquid glass. "He rested here for 3 nights, Marin continued. Each night, he heard a whisper beneath the sound of the water. At first, he thought it was the voice of the wind. Then he realized it was the forest itself speaking in the rhythm of his heartbeat. A small smile crossed their face. He stayed until he understood that the name the forest had given him was not meant to be spoken, but remembered. It meant rest, nothing more. The sound of the brook deepened its melody lower and slower, as though echoing the elder's tale. A few fireflies emerged from the shadows, their golden light flickering through the mist like drifting stars. Marin watched them with quiet joy. "The forest has a way of keeping company," they whispered. "Even when alone, one is never lonely here. Every leaf, every flicker of light, every small breath of wind, it all belongs to the same stillness." They reached into their pouch again and scattered a few sprigs of dried lavender onto the fire. The air filled with a soothing fragrance, cool and faintly floral, the scent curling into the shapes of sleep. A gentle wind moved through the clearing, carrying with it the faint hum of distant life, perhaps the rustle of a deer's steps, or the tremor of wings unseen. It brought a soft reminder that the world was wide but never empty. Marin tilted their head slightly as though listening to a voice only they could hear. Every night they murmured, "The forest asks a question. What will you leave behind in silence?" Their fingers brushed against the soil again, tracing slow spirals. "I always answer the same way," they said, "with gratitude." The word lingered warm and simple. Beyond the clearing, the moon began its slow descent, dipping lower among the branches. Its pale light pooled upon the moss, glinting off the rim of the elder's wooden cup. The world seemed to breathe in tandem, fire, water, air, earth, all steady, all calm. Marin looked into the embers. The forest does not rush to tell its stories, they said softly. It waits for the heart to slow enough to hear them. They leaned back slightly, eyes half closed, letting the warmth of the fire kiss their hands. The quiet between sounds was vast, but not empty. It was alive, humming gently with unseen life, like the pause between notes in a lullaby. For a long time, nothing more was said. The elders' breathing grew slow, even peaceful. The forest in turn matched that rhythm. Mist curled like silk around the roots of trees. Somewhere, an owl called a soft echo that hung in the air and dissolved into stillness. Marin smiled faintly, not from thought, but from knowing that this moment, this simple harmony, was the very heart of the elders' law. Not a tale to be told, but a feeling to be remembered. The fire sighed and shifted. The last sparks of orange folded inward, glowing like the final notes of a gentle song. The forest rested beneath the full hush of night. A faint silver fog had gathered low across the ground, weaving itself between tree trunks and roots like a dream moving through breath. The embers in the clearing still glowed, soft and steady, their light brushing against the moss in amber tones. Marin sat close to the warmth cloak drawn loosely around their shoulders. Their hair caught the glint of firelight, strands of silver and grey, like threads of moonlight caught in bark. Above, the sky stretched open and immense, the stars so numerous that the spaces between them seemed smaller than sound. A gentle sigh escaped the elders' lips. This hour, they whispered, belongs to stillness. The time when even thought slows to a drift like leaves on quiet water. The woods around them stirred softly as though agreeing. The sound of the brook had become faint, distant, but constant, its voice flowing beneath the silence like a heartbeat beneath sleep. Every few breaths, a cool breeze brushed past, carrying the scent of earth and faint blossoms hidden in the dark. Marin leaned forward and added a few thin twigs to the fire. The motion was unhurried. Sparks rose and spun into the air, tiny golden spirals that glimmered, paused, and disappeared. These sparks, Marin said, remind me of the first tales ever told. The stories were small at first, flickers of warmth in long nights. Each one was a spark passed from voice to voice. They looked into the glowing coals, their expression distant but calm. Even now, the forest remembers those early tellings. Every whisper of wind carries a remnant of them. The elder reached into a small wooden box beside them. The box, old its hinges, worn smooth by time and touch. Inside lay tiny objects wrapped in cloth, a polished pebble, a feather, a pressed leaf. Marin lifted each one with gentle reverence. This feather, they said, fell from a night bird the first time I came here. I kept it to remind me that rest like flight is a rhythm, not an end. They placed the feather back and lifted the pebble, next turning it between their fingers. And this, they murmured, was found in the brook. The water shaped it smooth through patient centuries. When I hold it, I remember that peace is shaped the same way through time, through quiet, through surrender. The fire crackled faintly, casting a pulse of gold upon Marin's face. They closed the box and rested their palms upon it, bowing their heads slightly, not in worship, but in thanks. Beyond the clearing, the trees swayed in slow unison. Their shadows moved like waves beneath the moonlight. The sound was rhythmic, almost musical, a deep, natural harmony woven through every leaf and branch. Marin opened their eyes again. Each night, they said the forest composes a song too vast for words. It plays in the stillness between moments. And if we listen long enough, we may hear the notes meant just for us. They paused, allowing the thought to settle like dust on quiet air. A firefly drifted close, hovering before Marin's hands. The small light pulsed gently, bright, dim, bright again, like the soft pulse of a living star. Marin smiled, extending a finger, but not touching. Even this tiny being, they whispered, carries the night's wisdom. It glows, then rests, then glows again. The forest breathes with it. The creature lingered for a moment, then rose and vanished into the mist. Marin leaned back, watching its trail disappear between the trees. Their breathing slowed deep and easy, like the rhythm of the fire. There is peace, they said quietly, in watching what leaves return. Every glow fades, yet the night remains luminous. The moon had climbed high now, pouring silver light over everything. The brook, the moss, the rough bark, the curve of Marine's hand. The forest seemed made of light and breath, its every detail softened by rest. Marin closed their eyes for a time, simply listening. The forest offered no answers, only presence. The steady hum of crickets, the soft hiss of fire, the slow turning of air through branches. It was enough. After a long silence, the elder spoke again, barely above a whisper. Stories like nights do not truly end. They only change shape. And when morning comes, they become part of what we call memory. They smiled faintly. Tonight's memory will be of stillness, The fire gave a final soft pop, and the sound drifted upward like a sigh. The moon began its slow descent through the branches, tracing threads of silver light across the clearing. The forest, now deep in its midnight rhythm, felt suspended between worlds, not waking, not dreaming, simply being. A cool mist floated near the ground, softening the edges of stones and roots until they seemed to drift within the air itself. Marin sat with a calm presence, hands folded gently in their lap. The fire beside them had quieted to embers, soft circles of orange and gold pulsing faintly like the glow of sleeping hearts. A few ashes lifted and vanished upward, carried by the lightest breath of wind. The elder watched them go, eyes reflecting the faint shimmer of the flames. "Everything rises, then returns," they murmured. "Even light has its own kind of rest." A night bird cooed in the distance, a single low sound that carried easily through the stillness. It was joined by the faint trill of crickets weaving small threads of rhythm through the dark. The sound was neither loud nor busy. It felt intentional, almost ceremonial, as though the forest itself were breathing in quiet prayer. Marin reached for their wooden cup and poured the last of their tea, now cooler, but still fragrant. A thin trail of steam lifted, twisting gently in the moonlight before disappearing into the night. "There's a comfort in repetition," they said softly. "The way one act mirrors another. The pouring, the breathing, the listening. Each becomes a small ritual of peace." They took a sip and exhaled slowly, the sound more sigh than word. Beyond the clearing, the brook shimmered like a path of glass. The water caught the moonlight and scattered it in thin, broken ribbons. A few fireflies danced low over its surface, their glow mirrored in the rippling current. Mara watched them for a long time, as though following the slow flow of thought. "I've always believed," they whispered, "that stories are streams too. They move where they must, winding through silence, shaping the stones of memory." They smiled, their voice dropping to a murmur. "When I was young, I tried to hold each story to keep its meaning fixed. But the forest taught me otherwise, that to understand something deeply, one must let it drift." The brook answered in soft agreement, its tone steady and kind. A gentle breeze swept through, carrying the scent of damp moss and pine. It brushed lightly across Marin's cloak, stirring the fabric with slow motion. The elder lifted their head and inhaled deeply, eyes closed. "The forest," they said, "teaches without speaking. It shows us how to soften, to bend, to rest in the rhythm of things." The air cooled slightly. Overhead clouds began to move in thin wisps, briefly veiling the stars. Their shadows passed gently over the clearing, dimming the light, deepening the hush. Marin's voice became almost a whisper. Some say the whispering woods are alive, not just with trees and roots, but with memory itself. Every sigh of wind, every step upon the path, they are all remembered, turned to quiet music. They leaned forward, stirring the embers once more. The faint glow flared, sending tiny sparks outward like golden seeds, scattered by invisible hands. Mara smiled softly, as though recognizing old friends. The first time I came here, they said I felt something I couldn't name. It was not awe nor fear, but recognition, as though the forest had been waiting and I had simply arrived home. The elder paused, watching a small spiral of smoke rise and dissolve. Now I know that what I felt was stillness, the kind that holds everything yet demands nothing. In the far distance, the forest gave a long sigh, a wind moving through endless leaves, gentle but vast. It was the sound of release, of ease, of time, stretching without measure. Marine listened with eyes half closed, allowing the sound to move through them like a tide. Each night, they murmured, is a lesson in letting go. Not of memories, but of holding them too tightly. They traced another circle in the earth beside them, slow and rhythmic. This circle, they said, is my reminder. What leaves returns. What quiets lives on. The air shimmered faintly, the mist glowing softly in the firelight. Marin leaned back at last, resting against the trunk of a tree. The bark was cool, rough, and reassuring beneath their palm. They let out a long breath, a release that seemed to merge with the forest's own. Above, a cluster of stars emerged again through the clouds, scattering silver across the treetops. The forest glowed faintly, as if lit from within. Everything, air, soil, sound and silence, was in harmony. Marin's eyes fluttered, half-shut voice barely a murmur now. In this stillness, they whispered, we remember what it means to be whole. The forest answered in quiet rustle, a promise soft and endless. Dawn was still far away. The forest lingered in that weightless hour between midnight and morning, when even time seemed to hesitate. The air was cool and tender, filled with the faint scent of dew forming upon moss and fern. The fire had dwindled to a soft glow, its embers pulsing beneath a skin of ash. Thin curls of smoke drifted upward, winding into the mist and vanishing as though carried into another world. Marin remained near it, seated cross-legged, eyes half closed, their breath slow and even, Each inhale drew in the night, the scent of cedar, the whisper of the brook, the faint shimmer of unseen life, and each exhale returned calm to the forest. The boundary between the elder and the woods had blurred. They seemed to breathe together now, one vast, steady rhythm. From somewhere behind the trees, the faint cry of a loon echoed a sound, long and pure, fading into silence. It lingered like a ribbon of sound across the water, delicate and infinite. Mara opened their eyes, gaze soft. "There it is again," they whispered. "The forest's lullaby." They tilted their heads slightly, listening as the echo drifted away. "Even the loneliest call," they murmured, "finds its place in this harmony. Every note belongs." A faint smile crossed their face. Not joy, but serenity. The quiet satisfaction of understanding. They reached into their cloak pocket and drew out a small stone, smooth gray and veined faintly with silver. They turned it between their fingers. "This stone," they said softly, "was found at the heart of the brook many years ago. It had been polished by patient waters, shaped by time alone. It reminds me that even the smallest things can hold the story of the whole." They set it beside the fire, a gentle offering. The mist began to thicken slightly, rolling like silk across the clearing. It brushed against the elder's hands, cool and feather-light. Through the haze, the faint silhouettes of trees appeared and disappeared, giving the forest the illusion of breathing. Marin spoke again, voice drifting like the smoke. "The whispering woods do not belong to any age," they said. "They exist in the space between what was and what will be. Here, everything that has ever been loved still lingers, not as memory, but as presence." The fire gave a small sigh, the coals shifting softly. Marin reached out and pressed their palm over the warmth, feeling the gentle heat through their skin. "The forest," they said, "keeps what the world forgets. It holds the quiet parts, the pauses between words, the rests between heartbeats." A faint rustle came from the underbrush, the sound of an animal moving carefully through the ferns. Marin did not turn. They simply smiled and whispered, "Come, little one. The woods are kind tonight." A soft shape emerged at the edge of the clearing, a deer small and graceful, its coat catching glimmers of moonlight. It paused, ears flicking, and for a long while both elder and creature regarded one another in silence. Then slowly, the deer lowered its head to drink from a small pool near the fire. The faint sound of lapping water blended with the murmur of the brook. Marin's voice followed low and almost indistinguishable from the wind. The forest teaches trust in this way, not through command, but through quiet. The deer lifted its head once more, blinking softly before stepping back into the mist. Its shape melted away until only the faint sound of movement remained. Marin sat a while longer, eyes resting on the space where the deer had been. All who enter, they whispered, find what they need. Some come seeking rest. Others come seeking remembrance. The forest offers both without question. They looked upward through the thinning canopy. The moon hung low now, brushing its light against the tops of trees. The stars beyond it were dimmer, fading in anticipation of dawn. The elders' expression softened. Soon the forest will dream again, they said. Even the night must sleep. A long pause followed. The forest seemed to settle into an even deeper calm, as if the air itself were exhaling. Marin reached for the small box once more, opening it to reveal the feather and pebble within. They placed the new stone beside them, completing the quiet trinity of tokens. These, they said, are the heart of my keeping. Not treasures, but reminders that peace is gathered slowly, the way dew gathers on leaves. They closed the lid and rested both hands upon it. The gesture was simple, reverent. We cannot hold peace, they whispered. We can only dwell within it as the trees do, rooted in silence, open to sky. The fire flickered once, then again, as if bowing to the words. For a while longer, Marin remained seated, letting the last of the warmth touch their palms. The air was cool but gentle. The forest hummed its deep, wordless song, a lullaby woven from rustling leaves and distant water. The elders' eyes fluttered closed. Their breathing matched the slow rhythm of the woods. And in that soft harmony, the whispering woods seemed to fold closer around them, not as a shroud, but as an embrace. The embers dimmed their glow, merging with the faint shimmer of dawn's promise far beyond the trees. The first hush of dawn had begun to drift across the horizon. Not yet light, not yet morning, but something softer in between. The forest held its breath, suspended in that fragile stillness before day. Mist hovered in silver ribbons above the moss, and every droplet of dew shimmered like a tiny, captured star. Marin stirred slightly, opening their eyes. The fire beside them was little more than a memory, a faint blush of warmth beneath gray ash. A single thread of smoke rose, twisting lazily upward before fading into the pale air. For a long while, the elder simply watched it disappear. There was peace in its vanishing, a quiet truth in the way it rose and dissolved, leaving only calm behind. The night has ended, Marin murmured, but the silence remains. The forest knows that endings are only pauses between breaths. The brook continued its endless murmur nearby, a constant companion through the turning of hours. Its song had changed subtly. What had once been a lullaby now sounded like a soft awakening, a gentle stirring of life beneath the surface. Marin rose slowly to their feet, steady and unhurried. Their joints moved with the slow rhythm of age, yet every motion carried grace, as though guided by the same patience that shaped the stones of the brook. They brushed the earth from their cloak, their fingers leaving faint imprints in the moss. All around, faint colors began to emerge. Pale gray, faint rose hints of gold. The sky was beginning to breathe again. Marin turned to the forest and bowed slightly, a gesture of gratitude. "You have kept me well," they whispered, "and in return, I have kept your stories." The woods seemed to answer with a rustle, a thousand soft replies carried by wind through branches. Each sound blended into a single harmony, ancient and kind. The elder smiled faintly. "When I was younger," they said, "I believed stories were something I carried. But I see now, it is they who have carried me." They stepped toward the brook, their feet silent upon the moss. The water glimmered faintly as they approached, small ripples catching the first threads of morning light. Marin knelt, cupping their hands to gather a little water. It was cool and clear against their skin. They let it slip through their fingers, returning it to the stream. "To return what is borrowed," they murmured, "is the forest's only law." As the elder rose again, the mist began to part, unveiling the world beyond the clearing. The paths of the whispering woods unfurled gently between the trees, winding in quiet invitation. The air was filled with faint bird song, hesitant at first, then steady, the sound of awakening. Marin listened, eyes softened with memory. "Long ago," they said, "an elder told me that the first song of each morning carries the forest's blessing. It is a reminder that even stillness continues to grow." The sound deepened, a layered chorus of wings and tones, blending perfectly with the brook and breeze. It was not loud. It was alive. Marin breathed it in, letting the melody settle within. They returned to the circle where the fire had been. The small box still rested beside it, along with the stones and feather, their quiet companions through the night. Marin knelt and gathered them carefully, placing each in its place, the feather on top, the stones nestled beneath. Each of these, they said softly, is a story, not told but lived. The feather for release, the stones for patience, the fire for remembrance. They closed the lid gently and tied the box shut with a length of worn twine. Then, in one final motion, they pressed their palm to its surface. And now, they whispered, they may sleep again. The moment lingered, the forest still, the elder stiller, as though the entire world was listening to that single quiet act of closure. A faint breeze moved through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of dawn, fresh bark, cool air, distant blossoms unseen. The forest glowed faintly now, every leaf rimmed with morning light. Marin straightened, looking once more toward the paths. The woods seemed endless, but not mysterious anymore. They had become familiar, an old friend, whose silence spoke more clearly than words. Each story ends with, "Return," the elder murmured, and return is the gentlest kind of beginning. Their voice faded into the sound of rustling leaves, the echo of the brook, the hum of awakening life. The last star vanished above the treetops. The first golden shimmer of sunlight touched the forest floor, spreading like a tender promise. Marin watched as the light moved, slow, patient kind, painting the mist in colors of peace. For a moment, they stood completely still, breathing it in every sense, quiet but alive. Then, with the same calm rhythm that had guided every movement, Marin turned from the clearing and began to walk. The moss softened each step. The woods received them as though expecting their return. The forest, vast and eternal, whispered softly in farewell, or perhaps in welcome. The sun had not yet broken fully through the horizon, but its light was beginning to thread delicately across the forest floor. It arrived in quiet streams, filtering through the branches in ribbons of gold and pale amber. The mist shimmered, catching the warmth like silk catching a sigh. The world was slowly awakening, softly, tenderly, without hurry. Marin walked along a narrow path winding between the trees. Their steps made no sound upon the moss, and their cloak brushed gently against ferns, still heavy with dew. Every now and then, the elder paused to watch a droplet fall, to listen to the faint stir of wings overhead, to breathe the clean scent of new light mingling with damp bark. The forest around them glowed with contentment, as though each leaf recognized this hour, the sacred pause, when night gives itself back to day. The woods never rush their mornings, Marin whispered. They know the value of slow beginnings. A soft sound came from above, a single bird's note, round and pure. Then another answered, and another, until a tapestry of song began to weave through the branches. It was gentle at first, a slow gathering of sound, before unfurling into a melody that seemed to wrap the forest in golden lace. Marin lifted their head and smiled. The day begins as the night ends with a song. They moved toward the brook once more, where the water glistened with the reflection of the rising light. Kneeling beside it, the elder dipped both hands into the cool current. The touch was refreshing, clear, alive, real. They watched the ripples drift outward, merging with the flow. The forest forgets nothing, they murmured. Even this touch becomes part of its memory. They scooped a small amount of water and let it pour slowly back into the stream. And so, we give what we take gently and with gratitude. Marin sat upon a flat stone beside the brook, the same place where countless travelers had likely paused before. Around them, the air was filled with a delicate hum, insects beginning their morning rhythms, leaves shifting softly in the rising breeze, the faint distant tap of branches brushing together. The elder watched as the light crept closer to the clearing where the fire had been. The ash still glowed faintly like the last sigh of a dream. "This is how nights end," they said quietly. Not in silence, but in continuation. The light remembers the dark, and the dark holds the shape of the light. They bowed to one another. Their voice lingered like incense in the air, fading into the murmur of the brook. For a while, Marin remained there, letting the forest move around them. The mist lifted slowly, revealing more of the worldwide trunks, curling vines, small mushrooms glowing faintly beneath the roots. Every detail seemed touched by kindness. The elder's thoughts drifted like clouds, unbound, unhurried. They thought of the stories they had told and those that had been told to them, of how each tale was not a possession, but a pulse part of something larger, continuous, infinite. The elder's law, they said softly, was never mine alone. It belongs to all who listen. They traced a slow circle upon the stone, their familiar gesture of completion. And those who listen, they whispered, become part of the story. A single shaft of sunlight broke through the canopy, then landing directly upon the box of keepsakes. The feather shimmered faintly where it rested atop the twine. The stones gleamed in soft, golden hues. Marin watched as the light caressed each item, as though the morning itself were blessing them. They closed their eyes. The forest will keep these now, they murmured. Its stories are safe in its own hands. Gently, they placed the box at the base of a tree, the largest in the clearing, with bark like old paper and roots that curved like arms. They pressed their palm against it, feeling the deep, steady heartbeat within. "Thank you," they whispered. The tree seemed to answer with a low, creaking sigh, the sound of ancient acceptance. The forest brightened slowly. Shafts of gold and white moved across the ground. Dewdrops turned to pearls, then to light. The scent of morning deepened, sweet, earthy, alive. Marin stepped back from the tree and looked toward the open path. All stories find their way home, they said, voice almost carried away by the breeze. And home, I think, is wherever peace decides to rest. They began to walk again, the rhythm of their steps matching the heartbeat of the woods. The brook's song followed them, threading between trunks and roots, whispering its farewell. Each step seemed to dissolve into the air, not leaving, not arriving, simply continuing. When Marin reached the edge of the forest, the light was warm upon their face. The world beyond shimmered softly, waiting unhurried. The elder turned once more, looking back into the whispering woods, the place where night had spoken and silence had taught. "Sleep well, my old friend," they said to the trees, "and may your whispers find all who need them." They smiled, bowed once more, and stepped into the light. Behind them, the forest remained ageless, breathing serene. The sound of its voice lingered long after a lullaby of rustling leaves and gentle wind, a promise that peace never truly departs. The whispering woods exhaled. The day began.